Hello, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of Moore's October Rants. Today's topic is something that's been on my mind for a while. I'm calling this one, Maybe Common Sense Isn't So Common. Now, we've all heard the phrase, right? Common sense. People throw it around like it's this universal thing we're all supposed to have, like, it's just common sense. How do you not get it? But lately, I've been wondering, maybe common sense really isn't all that common. Here's the thing. We like to assume that certain things are just, well, universally understood. Like, everyone should get this. But then you start talking to someone else about it, and suddenly it's like you're speaking a different language. It's not that they're dumb or clueless. It's that what we call common sense is often just a reflection of our personal experiences, our culture, or the environment we grew up in. What's common for one group of people might be completely foreign to another. Think about it like this. Say there's something that's considered common sense in American society. Maybe it's how we handle certain social cues, or how we expect people to drive on the right side of the road. Pretty basic, right? But then let's say you travel to another part of the world, let's go with England, where they drive on the left side. Suddenly, your common sense about driving doesn't apply anymore. You'd be the one going the wrong way. It's not that driving on the left is strange. It's just not common sense for you because you didn't grow up with it. So, when we say something is common sense, we have to recognize that it's not this universal truth. It's based on what's common within the society or culture you're used to. That's why when you tell someone it's just common sense and they don't get it, maybe it's not that they're being ignorant. Maybe they just come from a completely different background where that particular piece of common sense isn't part of their everyday life. Let's break it down further. Take something like technology. Now, to some people, using a smartphone or browsing the internet might feel like second nature. Like, how can anyone not know how to do this? It's been around forever. But that's the thing. Just because it's been around for a while doesn't mean it's common sense for everyone. There are people, especially older generations, who didn't grow up with this tech. It wasn't a part of their world, so expecting them to navigate it as easily as someone who's had a smartphone since they were 10 years old? Not really fair. And that's where this idea of common sense starts to fall apart a bit. It's not that people are choosing to be out of touch. It's that we have different life experiences that shape what we think is obvious or intuitive. We can't just assume that what comes naturally to us is going to come naturally to someone else. Let's flip it around. Say you grew up in a city where you had access to a good education. Maybe you went to college and you've had certain privileges that allowed you to gain specific knowledge. Now, for someone who didn't have that same background, maybe they didn't go to college, or they grew up in a different economic situation, the things you consider common sense might be completely foreign to them. Does that make them any less intelligent? Absolutely not. It just means they haven't been exposed to the same information or experiences that you have. I know it's easy to get frustrated when someone doesn't immediately grasp something you think is obvious. But we've got to check ourselves on that, because what's common sense to us is often just what's been taught to us, either directly or through experience. Now, I'll admit there are some things in life that seem like they should be common sense for everyone. Things like not stealing, not harming others. But even then, you'll find people who will challenge those ideas. We see it in courtrooms all the time. People will come up with justifications for behaviors that most of us consider wrong, whether it's due to mental illness, desperation, or even cultural differences. What's common sense morality to one group of people can still be a gray area for others. This all comes back to one key point. We have to stop assuming that everyone has the same knowledge base as we do. It's not just about being educated. It's about understanding that education isn't the same for everyone. Not every person learns the same way, or gets the same opportunities to learn the things we think are basic. Take the example of technology again. For someone who's always been around computers, it feels like common sense to know how to do basic troubleshooting, right? But what if you've never had to deal with that before? Maybe you've been focused on a completely different skill set, Let's say you're amazing at cutting hair or doing makeup, because that's where your passion lies. To you, that's common sense. How to blend foundation perfectly, how to give a killer haircut. But to the tech-savvy person, they wouldn't have a clue where to start. It's the same thing. We all have our areas of common sense, and they don't always overlap. It's also worth thinking about how different generations have their own versions of common sense. Newer generations grow up with smartphones, social media, and all the latest tech. It's second nature to them. But older generations, they didn't grow up with that. So their version of common sense is rooted in a different time and experience. So before we start rolling our eyes at someone for not understanding what seems so basic to us, let's take a step back and consider where they're coming from. So next time you catch yourself thinking, how does this person not know this? It's just common sense. Pause for a moment. Maybe, just maybe, what seems like common sense to you is simply a reflection of your own experiences, and that's okay. It's not about being smarter or more in touch than anyone else. It's about understanding that we all come from different walks of life, and what's common to one person might be completely unknown to another. All right, thanks for listening to this episode of Moore's October Rants. Hopefully this gave you something to think about when it comes to the idea of common sense. Stay open-minded, and I'll catch you next time.